The guys who do Dawah, what they don't tell you about their polemic against the Bible is that if you turn it and apply it to the Islamic faith or the Quran itself, it will destroy the Islamic faith and the Quran, which means either both the Bible and the Quran are problematic or the polemic is problematic. And if the polemic is problematic, well, then the Bible has no issue.
First of all, the Gospels are written anonymously. The authors don't introduce themselves.
Which is not uncommon in that time period. And by the way, whoever wrote down the Quran, they didn't introduce themselves of saying, hey, I'm one of the companions of the Prophet who memorized the recitation of what Muhammad gave us. I'm the one who's giving it. Here's what it says. So nobody introduces themselves in the Quran. Muhammad didn't write it down. Gabriel didn't write it down. The Spirit of God didn't write it down. Allah didn't write it down. Who wrote down your Quran?
Except for Luke. He doesn't tell you his name. Like, he tells you that he's a guy who's writing later, who has some sources, and he's gathering and collecting, and he's writing to his friend Theophilus. Okay, Matthew and Luke, Matthew and Mark are written anonymously. I'll give you an example. Okay, in the pericope of the calling of the fishermen, there is about 89 words. Got it? So in Matthew's version, there's 89 words. In Mark's version, there's 82 words. How many words are they sharing together? Are they agreeing on? Identically, they agree on 70% of the Greek wording. Imagine me and you in the same class, and this is just a simple example. There's hundreds. Right? Like I said, 90% of Mark is in Matthew and Luke. Imagine me and you are assigned to write a biography of Cristiano Ronaldo. And not only do we sequence his life in the same way, but we include the same exact stories about his life. And in those stories, we use 70 to 80% of the same words. And in some instances, 95% of the same Greek words.
All right, let me demonstrate why this isn't a legit polemic against the Bible, okay? You're shocked that there are narratives of the gospel concerning the life of Jesus Christ wherein there is overlap and citation of earlier books that share up to 70% of the same wording, okay? That's not problematic. That means that the other gospels are giving credibility to the gospels that they're referencing. See, you guys have another complaint toward Christianity. When you read the gospel narratives, there's enough difference in the different narratives of the story that you complain about it being a contradiction.
This is a contradiction that no Christian is able to solve. In the nativity account of the Gospel of Matthew.
So which is it? Are we word for word citing one another to make sure that these copies are lining up 70 to 80% in agreement, word for word? Or are there contradictions because the stories don't seem to match? Which is it? Make up your mind. You know what it actually is? It's that they quoted each other, giving credibility to each other's works, but then there's enough divergence in the story to lend credibility to the narrative being a unique narrative from the perspective of the author who is giving it, meaning they interviewed as many eyewitnesses as possible to give us the fullest extent of the life of Christ as possible. And so where you see differences in narrative, there's not a contradiction, it's a different perspective. And when you read all of the gospels that overlap and quote each other, then you can piece together a timeline that gives us an accurate rendering of the life and times of Jesus Christ. And guess what? Every single one of the gospels agree on. They agree on this thing. Jesus was crucified and rose again bodily from the grave.
Not only that, in some instances, you know when the author adds his own commentary? For example, in Matthew, when Jesus says, and so by Jesus saying this, he declared all foods clean. When the author adds his own commentary. Even that's copied. So in Mark, Jesus says, it's not what goes into the body that defiles it, it's what goes out of the body. And then the author has an editorial comment. By saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. Matthew has the same exact story in almost identical wording, and then says, by saying this, identical wording, just like Jesus made all foods clean.
So first of all, that's a lie. He's either misrepresenting it, which isn't that hard to expose, so it's kind of confusing why he would post this when he's straight up misrepresenting the text. And it's not that hard to demonstrate. Just read the text. So if Mark, who is referencing Peter, okay, Peter's the one who's giving this, is the source for Mark. So if Mark is using Peter as his source for the information that is primarily contained in his gospel record, and he says that by saying this, Jesus purges all food, making all food clean, this is coming from Peter, an apostle who has divine authority to establish doctrine. See, we have within the gospel record not only an accurate testimony of Jesus, but like, I guess you could call it like a hadith, right? You guys have hadith that are external to the Quran because the Quran does not give you the context of half the stories that are within it. So to expand upon what the Quran says, you need all these hadith that if you're Sunni, like this guy is, then you need the hadith, right? These are commentary that you believe is divine in its origin. Muhammad claims that Allah told him certain things that were then narrated through this isnad, this chain of narration, that you took into consideration the person's credibility, their character, their integrity, their closeness to the Prophet, and it traces itself down 200 years later. You're able to accurately demonstrate what Muhammad said, and there are things Allah revealed to Muhammad that are not recorded in the Quran. You as a Muslim believe that, okay? What we have in the New Testament is not only what happened with Jesus, but we have the direct commentary from the authoritative source, the close companions of Jesus, his apostles, whom Jesus gave authority to establish doctrine. We have that commentary right inside the actual text itself. So it's inspired. It is approved by God and inspired. So there's no problem there. But then if you go to Matthew, Matthew doesn't include the food being clean. Matthew, what he includes is the idea that what comes from within, evil thoughts, murders, idolatries, adultery, all of those things, taking a 9-year-old, taking your son, your adopted son's wife, things like that. Those are evil things that come out of the heart of a man and defile him. So at least get it right if you're going to try to attempt to claim that there's a problem here.
Well,
The sequence is the same. The wording is the same. The stories are the same, with some exceptions. Is it written by eyewitnesses or is it written by God?
Yeah, see, every book that exists on planet Earth was written by a human being, including the Quran. The Quran was literally written by a human being. Who wrote the Quran? Who wrote it down? Because Muhammad didn't. Who wrote it down? This is a simple question that Muslims cannot answer. And I'm asking my Muslim friends who made it this far watching the video, who wrote down the Quran? You say, well, Allah revealed it. It's a recitation. Muhammad couldn't read and write. Exactly. So what you're reading today, who wrote it down? You say, well, it was memorized by his companions, and the same thing they memorized is memorized to this day. I don't care. There's no way there's literally no way you can prove that, because you can't go back and compare to what they had memorized. The only thing you can go back to is looking at what was written down. So who wrote down the Quran? Was it God? Did God write it down? No, somebody wrote it down. And beside that, your entire system of hadith is based on eyewitness testimony to what Muhammad said. Though even those things that are coming from Allah that are not included in the Quran, it is not Muhammad who wrote it down. It's not Allah who wrote it down. You are trusting the eyewitness testimony of those who were his companions. You see what I said at the beginning of this video? Every polemic you level, thinking it toward Christianity, thinking it's going to demolish the Bible, if you take the same concepts, the same polemic, the same principles, and turn it toward Islam and turn it toward the Quran, it absolutely demolishes your own faith system. So what does that mean? It means we have to accept that maybe the Quran is legitimate and the scriptures are legitimate, but they both don't say the same thing. So we're going to have to go with that copy, that scripture that has more witness, testimony, reliability, external evidence than just one book that was written down after the death of the guy who claimed to have received revelation over the span of 23 years and was never affirmed by anything, no miracle, nothing. Nothing he did or said affirmed his prophethood. And the only thing that was written as a testimony to what he declared is contradicts what was written before it.